Money Radio, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. It's time to talk real estate with Laura Bramnick from talkrealestateaz.com. Talkrealestateaz.com. And Laura Bramnick is an attorney specializing in real estate. She's also a real estate agent, and she's a consumer advocate who represents her clients in residential and commercial and land transactions. Laura holds an active Arizona real estate license. She's been an investor over the years. She's a certified instructor with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, and she is licensed through the State Bar of Arizona, specializing in real estate. More info? Call Laura, 480-624-2705, 480-624-2705, and the website, this is an easy one to remember, talkrealestateaz.com. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sinclair.
I'd like to talk today about dual agency, because this is an important way of understanding. I mentioned you work as a consumer advocate with your clients.
Correct.
This is really important because everybody needs an advocate in a real estate transaction.
Yes. You and I have talked about it's probably the most expensive asset that the listeners are going to buy.
Sure.
And so you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so you want to be very serious about the investment, whether you're buying it to live in it or buying it to rent it out or just buying and holding, because your due diligence and your representation during the buying or selling period really set the tone for what happens when you close. And once you close, unless you have unusual circumstances, you can't go back and open it up again.
You could be kind of stuck.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to make sure you put the time and effort into getting the transaction right, protecting yourself, understanding what's involved. And as you and I have talked about before, in Arizona, most people buy and sell real estate without a lawyer. In
Right.
other states, that's unheard of. And the next step when you don't have a lawyer is many times you'll have the same agent represent the buyer and the seller. And that's called dual agency.
And you think about it, this could happen fairly easily. You have an agent selling a property, somebody comes along, sees the property, talks to the agent. They don't have their own agent
Correct.
representing them as the buyer. And so all of a sudden, the selling agent is representing both the seller and the buyer.
That's correct. And especially with the internet today, people can look at property. They used to have an agent go and look in the MLS for them.
Right.
But that is not the case anymore. So it's a good thing that we as consumers have access to listings,
Mm-hmm.
because you can do some research on the property before you go see it. But the bad news is that many times you get in a situation where you talk to the seller's agent if you're the buyer, and now the seller has what they call procuring cause, meaning they're entitled to the commission on the buyer's side and the seller's side. Then if you decide to get your own realtor, you can't get a realtor that will handle it because they won't get paid unless you pay them out of your pocket.
So if you have an agent, a broker agent, representing both the buyer and the seller, they get the full commission. So they probably kind of like that situation.
Yes, they like it because the standard commission, although commission is negotiable under the law, but most of the commissions we see are 6%.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the MLS, the selling broker offers the buyer a commission, usually 3, sometimes 2.5, depends on the situation. So you can get, instead of 3% as the seller's agent, you can get as much as 6%. That's a big chunk of change.
Right.
On a $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 property.
But it also sounds like there's just an inherent conflict of interest.
Lawyers feel very strongly about that. lawyers would never represent both sides.
Right.
I mean,
You
ethically.
wouldn't have the same lawyer prosecuting and
Right.
defending.
Yeah,
someone.
you know, if you go to trial, you can't be on both sides of the case.
Of course not.
So this is very foreign when a client comes to me and has a question about what their realtor's doing, who also represents the other side. It's very foreign to me, and so there's no way that the agent who represents both parties can advocate for both, because their interests are not the same. Now, some of the interests are the same. They both want the sale to close.
Right.
I get that. But when you have a buyer who is doing inspections and wants certain things to be repaired, but you also represent the seller who says, I want to pay the least amount of money to do these repairs, you know, and they may not use a licensed contractor. I mean, there's all kinds of issues that come up. The main thing is, how about the price?
Confidentiality,
Yeah.
privacy.
Fiduciary responsibility.
Absolutely.
Right. And, the first thing usually you negotiate is the price. Well, how do you get the seller the highest price and the buyer the lowest price? I mean, you just can't do it.
Well, this brings up another question, though. What about when you have one brokerage, but you have a buying agent and a selling agent from the same brokerage?
Right. Well, this is not as much of a red flag. If you have a big brokerage and you have one agent in one office and the other agent in the other office,
Yeah.
they may not know each other. But if you're in the same office, that's an issue too, because both agents have access to the files. And you don't, I don't know about other lawyers, but I take copious notes when I represent a client.
Right.
And even I write my thoughts down, whether it's on the computer or on paper in the file, about what my possible strategies are, what I don't want to have to disclose if I can avoid it, those kinds of things. So,
Sure.
you want to make sure as a buyer or a seller that you're totally protected. Now, what happens is, in the contract, when the agent represents both sides, both the seller and the buyer have to sign a form called consent to limited representation. And the form does spell this out, but as you and I know, most people don't read it that carefully, and many agents will not actually sit down and say, do you really know what this means?
Again, a point where you can help to provide some information as an attorney, but also just an awareness of what someone might be getting into, and this might not be the best possible. Dual agency might not be the best possible way to handle a transaction.
Yeah, are there transactions that go smoothly? Absolutely. But if you're in that situation and you weren't concerned initially, but you become concerned, get the advice of a lawyer.
I know a good one, Laura Bramnick.
Call me.
Talk
Absolutely.
Real Estate AZ at 480-624-2705. That's 480-624-2705. TalkRealEstateAZ.com is the website. Laura Bramnick, thank you.
Thanks, Sinclair.